Shut up and sit down.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. Man, we have a lot of things going on over here. Getting our plans finalized for ATA, getting everything all set for that. So, looks like we're going to be there again this year, all 3 days. And Frank and Ernie are back from their trip. They were in Missouri with us, as well as then they moved on to Nebraska. Ernie killed a good 10-point in Nebraska. Real nice deer. And then Frank missed a giant on that trip. And, you know, in a story that only Frank can tell, but it's the biggest deer he's ever shot at in the woods. So that's going to be a good one. John's on the board with a doe, and that's his first from the saddle. So, we've still been after it. My brother, who was on the podcast a while back from, talking about going out to South Dakota, the boys are back from South Dakota. He shot a nice little 7-point, and, a couple of his buddies shot some real nice deer out there. And my brother Drew, he's more of a casual hunter, and he shot his second buck of his life with a rifle, his first sit of the season. So, things are happening around here. We're getting everything finalized for our latest Patreon giveaway. Got the sticks in today. So if you haven't heard what we're doing, or you're new to the podcast, we have a Patreon page set up for the listeners that want to support the show. Listeners make a small donation each month that helps the cost of the podcast, so hosting the podcast and everything like that. And it also allows us to kind of go to these shows and kind of do some live podcasts and gear reviews and other things like that. But as a way of saying thanks, so we do quarterly giveaways. So we draw one of the Patreons, and we put together a package, maybe from people that have been on the show, or, just gear that we believe in, or things that we think that the listeners might be interested in. So this month, this quarter's giveaway is a complete saddle hunting kit. So with the buzz around saddle hunting, and we've been trying it out, and it's just not one of those things that you can just go anywhere and do. And if you're going to start out from square one, it's can be a pretty expensive endeavor. So we're giving away just about everything that you need to hunt from a saddle. So climbing system, we're giving away a set of Muddy Pro sticks. Platform is artisan outdoor fabrication platform, and that mounts to your top stick. So you set your sticks, and when your sticks are set, you're ready to hunt. So that's what I've been using all year, and I really like it. I don't see any need for anything else. That being said, I haven't tried the Predator from Tethered, but for right now, that's what I'm using. I really like it. So in that setup, we've got, your climbing system, set of sticks, platform, and Trophy Line is donating for us to give away to one of our Patreons, one of their new Ambush Pro setups. So full saddle kit, climbing system, and a platform. So each listener, by donating to the show, basically is putting themselves in the mix to be drawn for that. And so we do similar things like that 4 times a year. So that one's going to be going first week of January. And in addition to that, for our Patreons, we just opened up, so today I just started it, so there's nothing on there, but a Facebook page strictly for our Patreons. So a Facebook group to stay in contact, and a little bit more seamless way to disseminate information back and forth. So we're going to be doing, it's going to be a lot easier to go live during the podcast and when we're at ATA and Total Archery Challenge, stuff like that. So to let those guys follow along. So, if you're interested in that, you can check that out. Patreon.com/Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. And our latest Patreons, just want to give a shout out. Thanks to John Johnson, Michigan guy, Kyle Jensler, Michigan guy, and then Brandon Stone out of North Carolina. So, we've got lot of different people across the whole United States, and then we've got one Patreon in Switzerland, so that's pretty cool. It's going to be a bitch if he wins one of our giveaways because it's going to be really expensive to ship it over there. But we'll figure something out. It'll be great. and so though, for everybody that's been asking about the shirts, I got the shirts. They're in, and I'm getting them in the mail just as soon as I hear from anybody saying, let me know what size and everything like that. I'll have them up on the website here pretty soon. I just don't have a tally of actually what I have versus what's for sale, etc. So I'm going to get those on the website and on our Facebook page just as soon as possible. But I do have them in stock. So if you're interested in shirts or you've been messaging me, those are available. But if you're just here for the podcast, just here for the information, you can follow along with us on Facebook, Instagram, and then all of our episodes are uploaded to YouTube, as well as some other videos and things like that. Please hit the rating device, so 5 stars on Apple, however it is on Stitcher, Podbean, all of that other stuff. Please, that helps us move up in the rankings, and so other people can see us. But if you don't want to do any of that, you like what we're doing, just tell a friend. That's all we ask, and so that we can reach some more people, and it helps us kind of keep this whole thing rolling. So really appreciate it. Great episode for you today. I really think you're gonna like it. And here we go. Thanks for listening. All right, everybody, we're back with another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. We've got today a special guest for you, a guy that I've been trying to get on this podcast for over a year now. He gave me a date and a time, and I said, we can do it. So this guy, you might know him from the Public Land Challenge, the 2-year champion. I'll go ahead and say it first, the Big Buck Serial Killer 2.0, the Carhartt Killer, Joe Rentmeester. How you doing tonight, Joe?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
You got all kinds of nicknames, it sounds like. I like that.
Well, I mean, going up and doing kind of like the things that you've kind of done over the past couple years in the company that you've done it with, I mean, I think they fit, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So,
works for me.
People have probably followed along with, the hunting public and the Public Land Challenge and all of that sort of stuff. But for guys that maybe haven't, or, tell us a little bit about yourself and like how you started hunting and your hunting style, like from the get-go.
Sure. So the way, I guess, I started hunting is probably like most people. Somebody takes you out and you get excited about it, you get addicted to it, and you want to do it more and more. And the way it kind of started for me was my family had, or they still have, a 200-acre piece of property. We have about 13 guys that hunt it. Bow hunting, there's not as many guys on it. But about half of it's swamp, half of it's crop field, and then there's a little bit of hardwoods. And I get all these pictures of these different bucks, big bucks, right out of the gate. Actually, there was one that was a booner. And you get these pictures, and you just couldn't kill them. You knew they were there, and I would always bang my head up against the wall trying to figure out, well, how do I kill these stinking things? There's got to be a way to do it. So then I would turn to the traditional, well, back then it was like a VCR tape, watch the hunting videos of VCR tapes, read the magazine articles, and everything you try from all that wouldn't work. And then I started Google searching it and getting on forums, and someone said, hey, check out Dan and Falk's Marsh Bucks videos DVD. So I picked up that DVD, and instantly it made sense. It all clicked. And from there, it really took off. Now, what I did wrong for quite a while was I hunted that 2-acre piece of property for, I think like 4 or 5 years. I just hunted the heck out of it. And Dan would always say things like, you need to hunt a spot and then leave it. And I wasn't looking at the picture, and maybe I need to explain on that a little bit better. You'd hunt a spot and completely leave it alone. You wouldn't go in there, run trail cameras in there, scout it, just leave it alone completely. You go in there, hunt it. If it's no good, move on to the next spot. And when Dan explained that in those DVDs and I was younger, I thought of it in too small of a way, I guess you could say, because I would take that 200-acre piece of property and bounce from this tree to that tree to this tree to that tree, and I would have some success that way, but it wasn't big enough. And now, I guess, when I backpedal to what I was doing then compared to what I'm doing now, now it's huge. I mean, I'm going a mile here, 2 miles there, an hour drive there. So just really spreading it apart. And that might be a great tip for some listeners. I mean, I get a lot of people that message me and they ask for advice on their 40-acre piece of property, and they explain where their uncle hunts and their brother hunts, and you can't have that many people on a 40-acre piece of property and expect consistent success. You know, especially if they're hunting it day after day after day. And I guess define success, right? If you're out there to shoot a small buck or a doe or maybe that 2-year-old that comes through, and every state's different. It's very situational. You can have that success, but I guess if you're hunting mature bucks, and you really have to get around. You really have to move around, be mobile, and have a lot of different areas.
And one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is kind of like your mindset, right? So
yep.
It's really easy to go into somewhere and get down on yourself if you don't see what you are looking for. You can say, well, this is the only spot that I had and it's not working out, or there's another guy here, or things like that. When you first started out, what was your mindset and how has that changed over the years, the ability to adapt to the hunting situations?
Sure. So I guess I would say in the beginning, starting out, I guess I've always been a very stubborn person in the way that if something doesn't work out, I kind of go back to the drawing board. When I was younger, there were more times where I would get in a situation, it was difficult, whether I'd be tearing through a swamp and it didn't work out. And a lot of people have had those nights where you go into a swamp or you go into the hills and you trip and fall and all kinds of crazy stuff. You just give up for that night. I've had a lot of those nights, I guess, where you go back home and you're like, this is stupid. Why do I even hunt, right? This is just crazy. And then you wait a day, you wake up the next morning, you're like, oh, I know I hunt. I have to get back out there and keep plugging away at this. So just that mindset, how bad do you want it kind of thing. How has it changed now from in the past? It's really, I guess I would say it's really stayed the same. I leverage a lot of other people and the success that they're having to kind of motivate me. So when I get kind of frustrated with what I'm doing, you look at guys like Andy May, you know who he is, from Michigan, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine.
Yep.
You look at like what he's doing, and you look at it and you got to think to yourself, if he's doing it, if there's somebody doing what I want to be doing, there's a way that I need to be able to figure it out, right? If what you're trying to, if there's nobody doing what you're trying to achieve, well, then it's a little bit easier to be hard on yourself, because is it really possible? I guess that is a question. Is it really possible? But when somebody's doing what you want to be able to do, you can kind of use that as a driving force to try and achieve what they're doing. I don't know if that's a good way to word it or explain it, but it's the way I think about it.
Well, yeah, and I think that's what, kind of we are inspired by guys like yourself, guys like Andy May, guys like the hunting public, obviously Dan, seeing these guys that do it consistently and then on public
mm-hmm.
land and just go out there and in the same manner that anybody can do it. It's not, 4,000 acres in Iowa or, something like that that's managed and, you're naming all of these deer and doing all of these things.
Right. Yep.
But as far as that mindset, one of the things, and I kind of want to go through like some of your hunts here, but like this
Sure.
year, you killed the buck in a manner that I think is like the pinnacle, at least for me. Like when I look at, you say there's guys out there that are doing things and now that it can be done. So to shoot a deer in his bed and video it while he's laying there, that to me is like you knew 100% of the pieces of the puzzle, or
right.
You had it figured out enough and it all fell into place. And it's probably a combination of both of those. But I want to back up from that just a little bit. As on that same hunt, I feel like, we've all went in and it all depends on the mindset. But when you blow a buck out of there, or a target buck or whatever, when you mess up, right? It's real easy for most people to just throw in the towel and say that deer's gone. He's not going to be around anymore, and get really down because that's what everybody tells you is that, mature bucks, you only get one opportunity. If you screw them up, you're not going to have another opportunity on them. So
Right.
take us through that hunt and like kind of like your thought process and kind of how you came to that conclusion.
Sure. So I guess for people that don't know the exact story of what happened, you can catch the video on the Hunting Beast YouTube page, but I guess I'll kind of give a little story of what happened. So I always take a week of vacation for the first week of bow hunting here in Wisconsin, which is middle of September usually. And I took my first week of vacation, and I just did what I always do, and I was bouncing spots where I had seen deer in the summer or had trail cam pictures or was reading the sign that they're there, and I was bouncing around. And towards the end of my week off, I got to a point where I was actually hunting a field edge, a soybean field edge. And so the night that I was going in to set up, the night before that I was going in to set up, basically what it was there was an apple tree, a bean in the middle of two fields. There was a bean field on one side, a sorghum field on the other side, and then the apple tree, the fence line that the apple tree was on, led down to a small sliver of hardwoods. And when I got down to that small sliver of hardwoods, there was a very faint trail that came out of the sorghum. So I felt it was just very faint. You couldn't see any tracks on it because it was raining that night. But I felt like I needed to be able to shoot that trail just in case. But I also wanted to catch anything looping up through the beans to come up to that apple tree because you could tell that was being hit very hard. But what happened was I got set up, and then fairly early, because there was a front coming through, but fairly early I had a different buck come out into the field. He was like 150 yards out. It was like a 125-inch buck. But he came out into the field. Some different does started coming past me. Eventually that buck would have come past me, but the other doe smelled me and took the whole field with him. Everything was blowing out of the field. And I gave it a few minutes. I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, how I was going to handle it. And I decided I was going to get down, get out of the tree, because I figured those deer were blown into the woods a little ways. That way I could get out of there and then adjust appropriately for the next night and be set up over there. Because the other thing to think about too is, are those deer going to get my scent? Maybe, maybe not. So I wanted to, if they're going to get my scent, maybe they won't be back the next night, do a similar thing. If they didn't, then I'm in the game. So I started getting down early, and when I was using the saddle that night, and when I swung the saddle platform around the tree, it clanked. And right below me in the sorghum, I saw this buck, the buck that I ended up shooting, go tearing off. So he was actually sneaking in through the sorghum, kind of in a little different direction. It's kind of unique. It's kind of, I wish I would have videoed a little bit better to show it. But I saw him go tearing off straight back into, it's basically a drainage ditch that he was bedding in. And in the drainage ditch, there's some high ground with some trees. And from past experience, the bucks had always bedded in the point of these high trees. It's a very specific spot. And I'm trying to think which of Dan's videos it is. Dan's got a video where I actually have a video of a buck laying in the bed. We were driving by with our snowmobiles one time. It was laying there and ran back home and grabbed the video camera. But they're always laying in almost the exact same spot. And I knew that because I didn't blow him right out of the bed, he didn't get a smell of me. All he heard was a big clank in the tree that wasn't natural. So I felt very confident that he would be coming back because of that. And I guess that's a big key point is if they don't smell you, the jig is not up. And once they smell you, yeah, it's a little trickier. They relocate. And even another example I'll give of that kind of thing is when I was hunting down by Dan last winter, in the marsh by him, there was a buck. It was almost a booner, very old deer. And this thing kept watching me in the tree. It was circling around me, feeding in the cattails, and it kept watching me in the tree. And it was never bothered by me. I was kind of moving around, never bothered by me. And then suddenly he circled just to the point where he could smell me, and he took off. And that was a huge eye-opening lesson to me that they're not that smart. I mean, they're animals. They're using their nose. If they smell danger, that confirms it for them. They're going to get out of there. But that's another thing, I guess, too, that I would point out is the more experiences you can have in the woods, the more you have to fall back on, to lean on, to confirm and figure out what's going to happen in the future. So basically with this hunt, the next morning I got circled around. The wind was good where I could get off on a certain point, and that way when the deer came back in, he wouldn't cut my track. I actually came from the road up through some corn, and a lot of people talk about jay hooking, and I didn't feel as though the deer would J-hook through the corn sideways. If you could picture a buck dragging himself through the corn sideways, it just didn't make sense to me that a deer would do that. So I came right up through the corn row, got right on the edge, and the buck, in the early season, you see it a lot with the bucks. They'll come in an hour before light, and he was actually in below me an hour before light, and I could kind of see him below me in the moonlight. And he came in. At that point, I pretty much decided I was going to kill him, and then he was a little closer to me than I would have liked him. The way I was set up, the main bed is more so 30 yards to my right, and then I actually heard a different deer go into the main bed. So when I heard the other deer go into the main bed, I knew that this one below me was probably the satellite buck. The one in the bed was probably bigger, but I didn't know of anything that was substantially bigger, so I decided I was going to shoot the one below me. When it got light out, I looked over at the main bed. I couldn't see anything in it because it was bedded down, and I didn't look hard enough probably. But I shot this one, the buck that I ended up killing. I shot him, and then when I turned to the camera and started talking, the one to my right in the bed jumped up, and he was substantially bigger, actually. It was a buck I'd never seen before, but definitely a mature animal. But it was a pretty cool hunt. It just worked out pretty slick, and it made it pretty cool for video for people to see how that stuff can work.
Well, yeah, and like I said, for me, I think that's like the ultimate, right? Is like you said, I know where that deer is going to go. I went there, and I killed him. Now, on that note, like let's say that you did notice that other buck was in there, and he was substantially bigger, and now you've got this one. I mean, if you look at it from the video and from the GoPro angle, it looks like that deer's, damn near at the base of your tree. What do you do? How would you have adjusted at that point?
Well, for me, in that situation, the one thing that I kept looking at, I kept watching the buck below me, and he kept licking his nose. And when they're licking their nose, they're freshening it up to try and pull in smells. And it doesn't mean he was catching whiffs of me at all. He may have been. That was maybe what he was doing. But I was getting a little bit nervous that he might booger out of there. But had I known that other buck was over there, I would have had no problem with this one getting away on me. And even if this one would have smelled me and jumped up, it would have gotten the other buck to jump up and try and figure out what was going on. I guess that's a risk I would have definitely taken, considering the size of the other buck. This is how I would have handled that.
And so have you shot, I mean, I haven't seen all the videos that you've done, but have you shot deer in their beds like that?
Nope, I've not shot them not in their bed like that. I've had many situations where I can hear them come in gray, or I can see them coming in gray light, or I can hear them coming in the dark. And I see it quite often that they'll bed down in the dark. And if I would have waited long enough, I can almost guarantee you that this buck eventually would have stood up and either shifted or moved around or fed a little bit. I don't know if it would have taken an hour or 2 hours, but I see it a lot. You can hear them bed down, and then eventually they stand back up, and that's when you can get your shot. That was what I intended to do with the main bed, because that buck would have eventually stood up and shifted around. Even this specific bed, I've run trail cameras over it, and I've even in the trail cam videos and photos, you see it, they'll bed down, and then they'll stand up throughout the day and move over, and they're off the camera for a while, and they're on the camera for a while, and it's broad daylight, and they're in their bedding area, and they just move around, and they offer you shots. But the big thing with that is you really have to be careful with your wind, that your wind's not gonna hit them at any point or swirl. And that's the neat part about this particular setup that I had was it was a cluster of trees in a fence line over crop field, so I got really high so that my wind wouldn't swirl, because if you got down in that drainage ditch, you could picture the wind swirling. So my thing with that was just get really high in the tree and keep that scent over. I mean, I guess it worked out.
My main takeaway from that, though, and when kind of what I wanted to, portray to the listener was like, the motivation, that it can be done, and I mean it's videoed, and to do that and self-film it is, a feat in itself on any deer, because the more I do it, the more I realize how hard it is to do it well. But to be able to have, quote unquote, screwed up the night before and then kill one of those bucks the next day, exactly the plan. It's like most people will get down on themselves. Like if you boot a buck out of an area, if you, make that quote unquote mistake, it's really easy to, like you said, go home and take a couple days off and say, why do I even do this?
Yep.
But you said, nope, tomorrow I'm just going to go over there and kill them. And I think that, the guys that are successful, and we talked about it a lot when we were getting ready for our elk hunts and things like that. But, the killer mentality to say, I'm going there to kill this deer, this elk, this animal tomorrow, this day. Every hunt is to kill, not necessarily to hope or to, you've put everything in place to get it done. And I think that's where a lot of guys don't necessarily fail, but they don't go into it with that sort of like thought process,
Yeah, and it's hard to have a good attitude, especially like I felt like I was slightly defeated. I mean, I pounded hard the whole entire week. I hunted almost every morning. I had a lot of spots I was trying out, so it's hard not to get down on yourself. And you saying what you're saying reminds me of last year I ended up eating my Wisconsin tag because I was holding out for a specific buck. But during the last week, I started hunting some new areas. And I jumped up a buck, and I was just so kind of frustrated and down on myself. If you dig on the hunting beast, I actually made a post because I wanted confirmation. I wanted affirmation that people had experiences where they jumped up bucks and they came back to bed. So I mean, for me to say I don't get frustrated, don't get down on myself, I do. But then I personally looked last year for the reason to get back out in the morning. I made a post on the hunting beast, and I said, how many people have had this happen? Tell me about the story. Because I knew what I needed to do, but I wanted that boost in confidence, that little bit of inspiration. And sometimes you're not going to get some people don't have that internal motor that just makes them want to go, go, go. And if you don't have that, try and find it in other people. Find different ways to get going. I don't know how to say it better, but sometimes you have to find that motivation in other places. You can't get it from yourself.
Well, and that, like I say, that's one of the things why I wanted to do this podcast because, last year, you went out to Minnesota and a property that you've never set foot on and were able to kill a really nice buck out there. Then, I couldn't get you on the podcast. So I started talking to you. I heard you on another podcast and then, so I got back in touch with you. You killed that deer this year in Wisconsin with overcoming some adversity there. And then this year's Public Land Challenge, you come to our home state of Michigan, and then I feel like you guys encountered nothing but adversity, and you were able to kill another buck, with extenuating circumstances being what it was. So, with those public land challenges, how did they differ from state to state, being Minnesota and Michigan?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess with Minnesota, it was fairly strategic because we were acorn focused, right? So with Minnesota, it was the the middle of September, the second last week of September. So what we were looking for was, and you probably heard this from Dan 1,000 times, but we were looking for the secluded oaks. We were looking for those spots. Like if you look at like hill country, for example, the oaks are everywhere, so those deer don't have to move. They can stand up in their beds, eat right there. But we were looking for where the bucks had they couldn't bed in the oaks, but they were bedding next to the oaks, and you could catch them moving, and you knew that they were going to be there. So once we found what we were looking for, it was pretty simple. We just started island hopping. In that case, it was islands. I guess not every terrain is going to be islands. You might have, like in Michigan, there are oak flats that people were hunting. But that was pretty simple. It was just a matter of bouncing around until you got to that point. Now, Michigan was a little bit different because we tried both swampland. It was a type of swampland, and we tried. How do I describe it? It was kind of like hill country. It wasn't like a super aggressive type hill country, but we had deer in both spots, so we actually kind of bounced between spots. It was almost like every other day. We went from one spot to the other and just stayed in the action. Michigan was actually a big surprise to me and to us. If you watched the video, I believe it was day 2, was when Jake and I hunted that soybean field, and we had all those deer come up to that soybean field. That was quite impressive. We had think there were like 12 does that night, if I remember right, and those 2 bucks. Oh no, that was the third night. There were like 12 does. But it was just with the Michigan one, we really had to just keep moving around until we put ourselves in the right place. We had to kind of adapt where the pressure was. We did see it was kind of interesting. Once the day 2 video was released, the parking lot filled up, and I think some of the guys acknowledged they had seen the video, they recognized the spot, and other guys were just headed out to hunt for the weekend. But we had to just keep kind of staying one step ahead of everybody. Even on the night that we ended up killing, we had that guy push deeper than we had ever been, so we had to quickly jump down and push deeper than him. So it was the Michigan one was a lot of moving around, a lot of bouncing around. Not as strategic. It was kind of, everything was very situational. You had to kind of look at what was going on and take your past experiences and use them to predict what was going to happen, where you needed to be, kind of thing.
So I want to kind of take apart both of those a little bit, because from the Minnesota one, you know, I personally, I can see in my own hunting experience this year that it kind of like boggles my mind that you guys were able to do that, just in the sense where you look at a map and you see these islands, but to go all the way out there and find that there was oaks. You know, Dan always talks about in the Hunting Beast, you know, oak islands, get out there and find these oaks. And like you said, it's just
easier said than done.
Well, and you know, for myself and my buddy this year, and I kind of showing you where we were going, messaging back and forth, but you know, we went down in our river bottom system that we've got here, and there's, you know, you take the canoe in and you go up, and there's these islands, and there's this high ground, and it looks like, you know, there's hardwoods in there, and we're like, there's got to be oaks in there. You know, we walked for a mile in there, all the way out there, and there wasn't one oak tree. There's nothing. And it's like, okay, so we were banking on that, so now what? And, you know, so to look at a map and say, you know, you look, is there something specific that you're looking at when you're looking at Google Earth or, you know, Onyx that says that here's going to be oaks, versus like where we were at was everything is a maple tree? Yep.
And I'll be honest, I'm a little bit new to the Oak Island hunting game as well. For me, it's always been in the early season. It's always, you find like maybe a point that jets out into a swamp, or a cedar swamp, tamarack swamp, whatever it is. You'll find a point with some acorns on it, and you use that. You never have anything. It's pretty rare to find it perfect like we had it in Minnesota, or like down by Dan. He hunts a lot of acorn islands. He's got some perfect islands. But I guess if you're looking on a map, the thing that I've learned, I guess, to look for is, because you can't tell what's what, you're looking for an island that's surrounded by just simple cattails. If you start seeing like other brushy patches of stuff on the cattails, you don't know if that's another island or an oak tree, and it's hard to figure out what the size of the other stuff is. So, I mean, you could zoom way out on a map, figure out where all the swamps are, and then you want to just find it where it's just simply cattails, or in Minnesota it was like canary grass. It was some kind of grasses where it's a complete transition change. Because on a map it can be, even like when we were in Michigan, it was kind of deceiving as to what it was. We thought we were looking at a cattail swamp with islands when it was really those phragmites. So does that make sense? I guess you're looking for an island in the middle of an ocean of cattails.
Yeah.
To simplify it.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, so I'm in Michigan, so everything that we were looking at was canary grass and just not cattails. So, but from a map, it's difficult to discern from that, you know, 30,000 foot view or whatever.
Yeah, until you actually get out there, and that's almost that's a better thing to do, like for myself included, because I tried to hunt the acorn islands myself a little bit more this early season, and it didn't do well for me. And that's something this coming spring that I'll be putting some miles on, some new areas, and putting some pins on the maps to save them for next year, and make some notes next to them where the acorn trees are, and what acorn trees are going to be the first ones that they hit. Because that's another important thing too, is when you do have an acorn island, those deer are going to hit the first available acorns, and then they're going to stop. They're not going to move. More than likely, before dark, they're not going to move any further. They're just going to feed at those trees. So you have to be at the closest dropping tree to where they're coming from, where you're gonna be skunked. And a lot of times too, you can kind of, if you look, you can kind of tell what tree or trees they're feeding under just by how turned up it is. You can kind of tell by reading the sign.
Right. And so in Minnesota, we talked about it a little bit before the podcast, but the deer that you were seeing, what was like the age class or the differences in the deer that you saw there versus Michigan? And then what's the tag situation like in Minnesota?
Yep. So Minnesota was a tag situation pretty much just like Wisconsin. You get your one, your archery tag, and then I believe you get your gun tag too. I don't know because we weren't there for that. Now Minnesota has their gun seasons like right in the middle of the rut. So from my understanding, they take a heck of a beating on their deer that way. And now where we were too, the thing that helped in our situation in Minnesota was that we were so far back that those deer had not experienced or dealt with any humans. So that deer we caught by complete surprise, basically. In terms of age structure, we didn't see a ton of deer to get a good taste of that. I would say they're comparable to Wisconsin deer. Body size, age structure. We saw like a 2.5 on like our second night hunt. I did with, I think Ted was filming me. Dan had like a 1.5-year-old that was, I don't know what you'd call him, just a little basket rat, kind of comparable to what we have here in Wisconsin. I would say it was very comparable. But then when we went to Michigan, it was interesting because you'd look at a deer, and there was a deer that John Eberhardt was talking about, and he's like, oh, that's a 2.5. And in Wisconsin, it would have absolutely been a 1.5-year-old, just looking at the size of the body. And I believe John from what he was pointing out, some of the different details. But you guys just, for where we were in kind of the middle of the state, the body size of the deer were smaller. The racks of the deer were smaller. Even with the one I shot, some people said, oh, that's a 3-year-old. Some people said that's a 2-year-old. I couldn't tell you what it was. If that deer was in Wisconsin, that would be a 1.5, maybe a 2.5. So you guys definitely have it different in that regards for sure. Now, there was a different buck out there that was leaving a lot of the bigger sign. Tim, our marketing guy on the hunting piece, had actually seen the other bigger buck. And then after we left, we had 2 different people, I believe, send us trail cam pictures of that other buck. And it was like a 120-inch buck. Gosh, I couldn't tell you how old it was. It looked mature, but then again, it had a smaller body. So it's very weird. You guys probably have a better eye for it coming from that state, I would imagine.
It's hard. Everybody here is just so down on the state. And it really is coming back, but the way that, the reason I was asking about the tags is, I mean, obviously you saw the way that Michigan worked is you buy the combo tag so you can kill 2 bucks. There's no, there's antler point restrictions on the second one, depending on what area, what zone, what everything you're in. So everywhere we're hunting right now, you can kill whatever you want with whatever you want, kind of.
Sure. And we saw what that kind of did to you guys too, where I ended up killing my buck. There was a group of guys that would go in there, and I don't know if they would use their second tag as a doe tag or not, or what they would do. But I believe they took out 3 1.5-year-old bucks in the first few days. And I can kind of understand that mindset. You shoot your buck, and then you've got your buck, and the pressure's off, and now you can go chase something bigger. So I can see how that kind of might hurt you guys. Not that I have anything against it. I mean, if they want to shoot a 1.5-year-old buck and it gets them excited and fired up, they should. But I can see when you go in and you shoot all those, I can see what that does to you in terms of, and start getting those 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds,
Oh, yeah. I mean, so for us, we're a big proponent of the 1 buck tag, but because of the way that Michigan is and the revenue that they get, they're not going to do that. Personally, I think, and, everything being equal, I killed a 1.5-year-old buck this year. First one from the saddle, first one that I killed on video. And I'm ecstatic. I would, if I only had 1 buck tag, I'd be perfectly content. Because I met my goals that I set for this year, because those are the 2 things. Well, there's 3 things, because I wanted to make pastrami out of the deer. And so that was my main motivation. But, I would be perfectly content if that was my deer for the year. That being said, it may have changed the way that I approached my hunt. And I think that that's the one thing that we're getting away from. So even if we were allowed 2 bucks, but you had to register the first one, and the second one had to be 4 on one side or some sort of antler point restriction, where that's the way that it's supposed to be, but you had both those tags in your pocket and you killed one with 4 on one side. So you could have tagged that buck with your restricted tag and then went out the last day of the season and killed a 1.5-year old.
Right.
And
so it can happen either way.
Right.
Yep.
And, that is what it is. But, so when you guys came to Michigan, and I kind of talked to you a little bit before you came to Michigan, and, we talked to Dan, and you guys had conflicting stories. There's big deer everywhere and people are going to kill you.
Right.
What were your expectations coming into the state for this public land challenge, and your strategy before you got to Michigan, and then how did it change as you got into the hunting actually?
Yeah, so my answer would be exactly the same as Dan's. As before we went, we had no idea what we'd be getting into. And then just driving, as I was driving there that first day and just looking at the countryside along the highway and seeing how much good quality deer habitat you guys have, that I started to become optimistic pretty quick. And then the first day, Dan and I started driving around, and we're seeing deer all along the highways, and we're like, holy crap, this is way better than we had expected. The thing that I think is interesting for you guys, you have tons of does. I was talking to one Michigan guy, and he said that a lot of people look at the does in Michigan almost as sacred, like that's your Doe Factory, and that was kind of interesting to me. Have you ever heard that before? Would you agree with that? That's kind of the does are kind of your factory to have more bucks, so nobody shoots them. Is that correct?
To a degree. I mean, so John, who couldn't be here tonight, but he grew up. His whole family, they never shot does, ever.
Okay.
His dad was mad when he shot his first doe at 18 years old or something like that.
Really?
But they had no problem killing 2-year-and-a-half-old bucks. I mean, that Michigan, I think, has a culture of I don't think maybe it's as strong as Wisconsin. Maybe right on par, especially as you get into northern Michigan and the UP, as far as rifle camp and that sort of thing. Our rifle hunting tradition and the deer camps are, that tradition is strong. But there's a lot of I got to shoot my buck guy. And the way that Michigan does their Doe permits also is Michigan almost treats it that way. We don't have any sort of mandatory registration, so it's all kind of estimate wise as far as what was actually harvested versus what they think was harvested. And
Yep. It makes it very confusing. I was told they take some surveys here and there too. They I don't remember how they explained it, but it was very interesting how they do that.
Yeah, and so a lot of people are looked down upon, by shooting does, and they don't do that, and you can't shoot the does because those are what bring the bucks around, and it's weird. My family, I grew up. We were in 8 miles from Wisconsin, Menominee County, and we were in, for many years was the highest deer population in Michigan as far as does, and they gave out the most doe permits, and we never killed bucks to speak of. But we killed a lot of does. So me coming from the opposite side of that spectrum, but yeah.
And I guess the thing I would say about Michigan, if I had to compare Michigan to where I live, I would say you guys, the area we were in, I would say that the big bucks are there, just like back home, numbers-wise, in terms of the big bucks, the trophy buck, the one that everybody wants. I would say it's probably similar to where I am, but you guys just have a lot more does. So for me, it's not uncommon to sit and just not see any deer, period. Out there, it was, if you didn't see a few does run by, it was kind of a surprise, I guess. I would tell the Michigan guys not to get down on themselves. I mean, if you're a trophy hunter, they're definitely there. And another thing too, look what Michigan has done to somebody like Andy May or John Eberhart. You become a product of your environment, right? So if you're born in Ohio or Iowa, and not to bash those guys, but you don't have difficult hunting. You don't have to learn. You don't have to learn different tactics, outside the box things to get it done. You can just get out there during the rut and catch a buck running by crazy and get excited about it, which is cool too. But I guess for the Michigan guys that want to get down on themselves, I would say flip it and use it as a way to become a better hunter. Because if you can kill in Michigan or in my part of Wisconsin, I believe, if you can get it done, you're a product of your environment. You come out of there and you go to another state, you just kick butt. You're gonna be a foot up on a lot of guys. And you look at a lot of these guys like Greg Miller. I can't remember half of them, but a lot of them came from very difficult to hunt states. Scott Buckley, he came from Michigan, so he had to learn how to get it done in a very difficult state, and now he goes to Iowa and just smashes giants. So coming from a difficult state or hunting in a difficult state, that's a good thing. That makes you a better hunter than everybody else, in my opinion, if you can get it done. If that's your goal, I guess.
Right.
I like to look at it that way.
And so, kind of back to, so we established that, when you guys came here, you had one sort of expectation, and then you were kind of surprised as the amount of deer and everything. But,
yep.
Another, you guys were hit with a ton of adversity. I mean, it was monsoon rains, and
right.
The spots that you were hunting was, just completely flooded. What made you continue to hunt those flooded areas? And from my understanding, they were quite a ways from camp. Why did you continue to go back to those areas versus finding something maybe a little bit more easy to hunt or more comfortable
Sure.
to hunt, I guess?
Yep. So the flooding actually worked out to our advantage. So the flooding, all the stuff that flooded was where most of the deer would normally be bedding, down in the river bottoms, where it's kind of mucky and nasty and brushy and thick. And with the flooding, everything, all those little dry bogs that the deer would be sitting on were completely eliminated, so it pushed them up into the hills. It actually made it better for us, and I think that's part of why we saw so many deer, because they couldn't sit down in the river bottoms and feed. They were pushed up into the hills where things are a little bit crazy. So for us to drive anywhere else and go try and find something that's a little bit better almost would have been crazy. It pushed the deer into our lap, so to speak.
And, like I said, with the adversity, I mean, you guys were, somewhat forced to hunt, right? So you were given this time
Yep.
frame
Yep.
and, taking off of work, time from family, to make things even more pressure of, being filmed the entire time and documenting the whole story in a difficult state.
Sure.
You guys kind of were forced to endure, right? But I think one of the things that kind of blew my mind was on that last hunt, where you did end up killing, you had every hunter's like nightmare, so to speak, as you were set up in the perfect amount of time. You were there kind of where you wanted to be, give or take, and you got guys walk right underneath you. And a lot of guys would be pissed and throw in the towel and just say, well, I can't do this. A couple things. One, if that happened to you at home, would you have reacted the same because you weren't on the same timetable? Did that come into factor, or and then what made you decide to do, kind of what you did that ended up everything working out?
Yeah, back home I would have absolutely done the same thing. I only get the way my work works, I only get to hunt 2, maybe 3 nights a week, and then I have a fair amount of vacation. But with only 2 or 3 nights a week, if I'm hunting in the evening and someone comes rolling in on me, I'm going to absolutely get down and adjust, because that night that I have to be able to hunt is kind of precious to me. I can hunt almost any morning, which is nice. But yeah, I would have absolutely done the same thing. And then what was your follow-up question to that? What led us to do that?
So once you got down and made that decision,
Yep.
How did you end up in the spot that you did? And take us through kind of like the rest of that hunt.
Sure. Yep. So when those guys came down in on us, he told us, the guy told us that he was going to go about 250 yards back. So we looped entirely around them to not mess with them. And then when we got back deeper, what we started noticing was that it started getting thicker, right? So everything was very open. You could it was like just an open hardwoods. A lot of people can picture that. A lot of people hunt that. And you could just see the entire open hardwoods. And you just don't see a lot of deer bedding in that. I mean, you get your does and your smaller bucks that'll bed in little pockets in there. But if you're after a decent bucket, they're just not bedding out in that open hardwoods too often. Obviously, in northern Michigan, it's a whole different story. I don't really know anything about that. But in these pressure type areas. Now, as the way it was shaped, it was like a great big ridge that was flat on the top that went back. I would say that the entire ridge probably went back like 1,200 yards. We went back 900 yards from the field. And it kind of goes to a point, and you could see on the map the way it went to a point and then tapered down. And it looked a little bit thicker on the map, but as we got closer to that point, it started getting really thick, and you could see when we got into our kill spot, you could see on the ground where all the deer were staging. And when you get into a buck staging area or doe staging area or whatever where they're feeding, you can tell there's just tracks everywhere, and they're kind of random. And if you watch that video of the buck ended up killing, and you watch how he walks around underneath that oak tree just feeding, he does a lot of moving around. And you just picture the amount of tracks that deer just left under that one tree. That's what we were seeing in the spot that we ended up setting up. So we knew we were right tight in there. I have a bad habit of pushing too far sometimes. So I did want to push just a fuzz further, maybe 20 or 30 yards more. But Jake's like, I think we should set up right here. We did blow just past where we set up. We did blow a deer off. There's like a little knob that's in the video. You can see the beds go around. And where that bed is too, that deer is sitting right on whatever that deer was that we jumped. It was sitting right on the edge of the thick and the open hardwoods, and it can see everything coming through the open hardwoods. And I don't know if I don't think that was the buck I ended up shooting. What I think happened there was, I think it was the smaller buck. If you watch in the video, the buck I shot, there was like a 1.5-year-old with it. But what I think happened is we jumped up that smaller 1.5-year-old buck, and he ran back into the main bedding area, and it got the deer on their feet. And I've seen that quite a bit at home, like in the swamps, where you jump up one deer, it gets all the deer up, and pretty soon you have the deer up and moving early. And they'll run back there, they'll be spooked, or they won't know what you are, and they aren't terribly spooked, and it doesn't alert the other deer too bad. Because I think what happened was that 1.5-year-old was slightly spooked, and he kind of stayed back there, and then the one I ended up shooting got up on his feet, started feeding, and that's why the smaller one came in second. And that's kind of a guess, but that's what ended up happening ultimately.
And so, what was different about that hunt than, all of the much bigger deer that you've killed, all over the country? Because that kind of had you shook a little bit.
Yeah, it did. So there's a lot of reasons for that, I guess. Just that I wanted to kill him so bad, right? And I had him cutting in and out of holes, and I didn't want to take a shot over 30 yards, and he was at like 35 and then 40. And then I wasn't sure if he was going to go back in the cover or come past me, so that really started rattling me. One thing that I was kind of joking about with Dan is if you think about it, let's say you shoot a buck on video and that video gets 100,000 views. When you're in that tree, and maybe I shouldn't think about it this way, it sounds really stupid, but when you're in that tree, picture an audience of 100,000 people. So if I take a shot and I shoot the thing in the ass or something, that you got an audience of 100,000 people watching that, right? So I think that put a little bit of pressure on me, whereas at home, if I don't have to show the video, right? Whereas this was going to be on video no matter what. And then what was the other part? There are kind of three parts to it that kind of rattled me. Just how, and I guess just the whole week. You pound the whole week, and I turn over and I see that deer, and I'm like, crap. I'm like, this is my last shot. We're leaving tomorrow. If I don't kill this thing, this is it. This is for all the money. So, yeah, I think that a lot of that played into it. If it were at home, I would have been just kind of calm and calculated like usual and shot him, and it would have been simple. And communicating with Jake made it difficult too, because I didn't know he couldn't hear me, and he didn't know I couldn't hear him, and that was kind of a mess. And he wanted to get it on video, and so I guess I did too, but that made it harder. Just a whole lot of crazy stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean,
it's pretty cool though.
Oh, and that's the thing for the viewer to to see that and to see the excitement, because I think that is what most people feel, because they maybe haven't killed as many deer or whatever, and especially for like our listener, that's why we do it. We get super excited, and when guys like the Druries or whatever, they just shoot one and they say, "Oh, that was Moses or Thor or whatever," and I'm really happy that I got to
Yep.
kill him, and
Yep.
they don't
You
get
can't relate to
excited,
that.
right? And
Right.
that's awesome. But one of the things, and you can answer this however you want to, but amongst our podcast, there's been some speculation that the whole Carhartt killer thing, that you killed that deer in Michigan in jeans and whatever, based on you kept mentioning John Eberhart, and he's very well known for his scent control, scent lock,
Sure.
everything, and it's public land, Michigan. You've got to be, you can't kill one in Michigan if you're not, X. The deer you killed in Wisconsin, you were wearing camouflage and everything like that. Was that how much of that came into play?
None of it was really because of the scent lock side of things. Mainly it's just because I'm cheaper than hell. I've got some rentals out here back home, and those are my pants that I wear when I'm working on those, or when I'm hunting. It really doesn't make a difference. And like, we had all that rain, so I have two pairs of camouflage pants, one for warm weather, one for cold weather. Those were all soaked and nasty from the rain, and that's what I had left, so that's what I wore. But as long as I guess I look at the color of the pants a little bit. I'm not a big fan of black pants. One time I was hunting in a swamp, and Tyler Witt, or Big Hunt they call him, he was on the other side of the swamp, and I had some really dark camouflage, and he took a picture of me up in the tree, and I looked like a black grizzly bear. So ever since then, I just want something that's a little bit lighter like that. I had the light Carhartt color, and then there was a brown pair that I was wearing as well. And then I had a gray sweatshirt. Grays seemed to blend in pretty well in the woods, but I didn't care. The one thing I will say, I've gotten a lot of crap for like the buck in Minnesota. I wasn't wearing a hat. I didn't have face paint. The buck in the bed, I wasn't wearing a hat. I didn't have face paint. And the THP guys were giving me some crap for that, and I thought that was funny. So when I ended up not shooting this with no hat and no face paint and no face mask, it was kind of funny. Now, I will say, if I were going in on a big old mature buck, I would probably, I guess I can't even say that, because that was the plan when I went. I had full intentions of killing that buck back home here, but is face paint necessary? It's not a bad idea, I guess, because you picture that your bleach white face in the tree just really sticks out. But I don't know. The whole no hat, no face mask thing, I thought was kind of funny, the way it worked out, and I got a lot of crap for it. So,
well, I think it's hilarious because there's so many people that want to push product. They want to do ozonics. They want to do scent lock. They want to do this camouflage. They want to do this face paint. They want to do ghillie suits. They want to do everything that kind of like makes money, or that's
right.
And I think for so long, you hear that stuff pounded down your throat, and you're like, well, I have to do this, I have to do that.
Right.
To see somebody go twice now into different states, land they've never been on, and kill deer in this situation, and I mean, essentially, you were in your work clothes and and got it done. It's both refreshing, but hilarious. Like I say, and so where we live here, in Muskegon, Michigan, is where Scent Lock is headquartered. My mom went to school with the owner, the creator of Scent Lock. I had one of the first Scent Lock suits that I bought out of his basement. So, I mean, we're very familiar in this area with the company and everything. It's done a lot for the hunting industry and things here in the town. But it's hilarious to see the both sides of that coin, and to go and do it. So that's why I'm saying, like, you're in camp with John Eberhart, who has the video with the tethered guys of his scent control regimen, and it was awesome to see. And so
I could never do what he does. I'm a big sweater. I get a little bit warm and I sweat, so I could never ever make that work. I mean, if you look in the video, once we got to the back of that ridge, I was just full of sweat when we moved for the second time because I left a lot of my clothes on. I was just all sweated up, and it would just never work for me.
And so was there anything that you took away from like that hunt in Michigan that you're going to use going forward? Or,
Yeah, my biggest learning experience from Michigan is that, and Dan kept pointing it out too, that's the other cool part is not many people can say they hunted with Dan in fall, right? So and I always tell him, like, dude, if there's something you think I'm doing that is stupid or ridiculous or I need to adjust a little bit, just tell me. Like, I want to know. I want the feedback. I don't care how you say it. You're not going to hurt my feelings. And the big thing I kept doing, like, there was a buck. It didn't get shown very well in the videos, but there was a buck up in that cattail swamp, and I looked at it on a map, and I just dove right in. And that buck was bedded not that deep in, and I could have sat right on the dike and shot that thing. And I actually backed up and tried to shoot it a different night, and it caught my wind. I didn't see him, but I heard him come through the water, and he caught my wind and bucked out of there. But just too often I just dive too deep. That was a huge learning lesson for me. I overthink stuff a lot, so that was huge. And even the buck I killed, I wanted to go 20 yards deeper, and Jake's like, no, we need to hold up right here. And he was exactly correct.
Yeah, I did that a week or so ago. I just kept going further and further, looking for sign, and I found, like how you mentioned that faint trail. And I found that faint trail, but it didn't seem like it was going anywhere. There was water everywhere. And I went 40 yards further and found a couple oak trees, right on the edge of bedding, and I thought, this is going to be it. And the wind was blowing back to that faint trail, and I got busted, right at, 20 minutes before last light, and actually
that's the way you learn.
Yeah. And that's what it is, to watch you guys, to watch the hunting public, to watch Dan, and, Dan does a great job in his videos and, the videos that you've got on the Hunting Beast of breaking down like why and how. The one thing we don't get is the backstory of the 100 blown opportunities or whatever. That's the problem, I think, a little bit with YouTube and Facebook and social media versus, kind of what you were referencing there on the forum is you don't get that, everybody wants to show the highlights. They don't want to show the times that they screwed it up, right?
Right.
So, and so one of the things that we got to see on the, that public land challenge, and we've seen it a few different times in your videos, is you've come up with that spare arrow that goes on there. So kind of how did that come about?
So I've had one of my problems. I have a little bit of target panic, and one of my problems is I bring my pin when I have a deer in front of me. I'll draw back and I'll bring my pin down onto the deer, and I freak out and I shoot. And I've spined many deer. I have a bunch of videos of me spinning all these different deer. I've killed a lot of good deer spinning them. And I had always thought that and I always had to shoot a second time. And I had always thought that it was my bow was too slow. So I bought a different bow that was way faster. And I hit the darn thing high still. And I figured out that it was target panic, which is why I was hitting it high. But in the process of all that, I needed a second arrow all the time. And the one that I shot I've got an Instagram video if you watch it. It was a 149-inch buck. He came in, I shot him. It was high in the lungs, but he actually ran closer to me and stood and stared at me. And I reached back. I had my arrows hung behind me, and I reached back to grab an extra arrow that was behind me, and he busted me doing it. You can hear the arrow clank on the tree in the video. So my quiver kind of clanked on the tree, and he busted me. And I thought if I had been able to just get the arrow in him quicker, that would have solved it. And in the past, what I used to do is I'd take all my quiver brackets, an extra quiver bracket, and I would just drill it into the side of the stand. But then I bought a new Lone Wolf Assault 2, and I just really didn't feel like drilling a hole into the side of that stand. So I had my buddy machine me a block of machined aluminum with 2 holes in it. And that was kind of big and gaudy, and I couldn't get it at the angle I wanted it. So then he machined me a round one, and it worked pretty slick because you have to see the way it works. It's almost impossible to describe it without seeing it, but you can literally have your quivers at whatever angle you want. You can have them on your left and on your right, and you just reach down and grab one with very minimal motion. You can look down and see it if the deer's kind of looking at you or whatever. For me, it's all about, when you have those things happen, taking care of those little details. And that's one thing too. When I go back to like the face mask thing, it's probably a good idea to wear a face mask, because that one time I have a mature buck come in and look up at me and see my bleach white face, I'm going to regret it. So it's just all those little details, and that's one little problem that I felt had never been solved. And I made one for myself, and my buddies are like, well, that's cool, I want one. So I figured, what the heck, I have the Dan help me out, and Dan, Mario, and Robin, they got it up on their site, and they worked pretty slick. It worked pretty well.
And so you mentioned that you were saddle hunting that first day. How does that work with the saddle, the saddle platform, or what are you doing with it on that?
Yeah, it doesn't work very well on the saddle. I still have it on the bottom of the platform, but the way your heels hang over on the edge of the platform, you'd hit it all the time. So you just kind of have to do what everybody else does and stuff it up in a branch or leave it on your bow. Or a lot of those guys have the accessory hooks. It just doesn't work well from a saddle.
Okay. Yeah, because
somebody could probably make a little bracket that goes on a strap or something that would work well.
Okay.
A lot of guys just hook it, but
okay. Yeah, I was curious about that. Yeah, we always had the quickie quivers and had those screwed to the side of our stands for forever. But you end up with a tight spot or a Matthews or one of the Trophy Ridge ones, and it's not as easy to come by an extra bracket, and then the cam lock on there and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a very tricky part. The tight spot ones you can find fairly easily, but they are $30, so it's not cheap. Once you get everything all on there. But the way I look at it, this is going to sound like a sales pitch. If it's the difference between getting that second shot off and getting the buck, or not getting the second shot off and not getting the buck, I spend all those hours in a year. I want everything right. I want everything perfect. So I can't make any excuses for myself. I get as anal as at the beginning of every year. I pull apart my entire lone wolf, and you're supposed to use the bowstring wax, and I'll wax every single washer. Because if I don't wax it and I go out and have a big buck come in and that tree stand pops or squeaks, I'll be pissed off at myself, because I know that I should have sat down one night with a beer and just waxed all my washers. So just all those little details, eliminate all those things, so you have no excuses not to get a deer.
Right. And so where can somebody, if they're interested in that, where can they check those out at?
Yep. So they're on the Hunting Beast Gear website. You have to go, not the Hunting Beast website, but the Hunting Beast Gear website. You just Google search it, and you can find them on there. We got plenty of them for people.
That's awesome.
Check them out.
And so what's your bow setup and your arrows and all that?
Sure. So I was initially shooting the Halon 6, and I'm still working on my target panic thing. And Andy May has been kind of helping me through that a bit. And the one thing he mentioned about the Halon 6 was that it's kind of top heavy, and I would definitely agree with him. There's always just been something a little off about it. So this year I switched to the Triax, and it shoots really nice. I like the way it shoots. In terms of a release, God, I can't remember what it is. I think it's like I couldn't even tell you. Bow sight, I like my HHAs. You can custom order those HHA single pin adjustable sights with a smaller pin, and I like that too, because some of the pins that you get, just like if you go to your archery shop and pick up a True Glow sight, they're just so big that when you draw back on a deer at 30 yards, it covers the entire vitals. And they've got that like a rheostat or whatever they call it on the HHA sight, where you can dim it down and get the pin to be nice and small. I like that. I know a lot of guys get way more technical with their archery equipment than I do. And then I just like my HHA Q80 rest. That works well.
And what are you shooting for broadheads?
The G5 Striker, and I guess they just discontinued those and turned them into like something different. They're bigger. I don't know. I just snagged up 2 more packs of them as they're discontinuing them. They've always worked well for me. I used to work at an archery shop, and every year Matthews would do a bunch of tests as to what broadheads flew the best out of their bows. And the G5 Striker and the Flick Tricks for fixed blade were 2 of the best flying broadheads, and I've just stuck with them. They worked really well.
Yeah, I think I said it on the last couple podcasts, but I always loved it. We we're bow hunting podcasts, so we ask everybody their bow hunting setups. But what's awesome is you talked about breaking down, taking apart your stand and waxing everything, and you're like, oh, my bow is this. I can't remember my release. The guys that are I mean, I feel like the guys that are consistently killing big deer, at a good clip, are spending most of their time making sure that their gear is right. They're doing all of the scouting. They're figuring out the setups. And then whatever their bow is, whatever their broadhead, they know that they're going to be within, X amount of yards and that they're going to be proficient. They're not saying, okay, well, I need to shoot 70 yards and I need to be, everything. And it's a really interesting, kind of like case study on different individuals versus like where their priorities lie, I guess.
So you're saying like with the big buck killers, you're noticing a slight lack of priorities around the archery equipment. They just want to know that they're hitting what they're aiming at. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, to a degree, but I think it's like that they're not necessarily saying like everything has to be. They're not as meticulous with their bow setup as they are their stand, their entry, and setup.
Sure. Yeah, I could understand that to a degree. I do think I personally need to get a little bit more detailed with it. And like even with my rest, I used to have this old Alpine drop away, and as you drew back, your cable slide would slide across that bar, and the rest would slowly come up. Well, one morning that bar was sticky, and the rest kind of like it was like a slingshot, like it flickered up. Mm-hmm. I shot my arrow into my sight, and the buck ran off. So I mean, just to say I haven't gone through and tried a lot of different things, I definitely have, but.
Oh, for sure.
You get those things at work and you stick with them.
So I think that's pretty much all we've got for this evening. So where can people follow along with everything that you're doing, Joe? And, if they've got questions or anything more on this.
Yep. So all of my stuff that I put out is on the Hunting Beast page, Dan's Hunting Beast on YouTube. I do a little bit of posting on the forum. I have a hard time keeping up with that, so not as much lately. And then I have my Instagram page, as well as the Hunting Beast Instagram page. You can find some of my stuff on, and that's about it.
Well, awesome. Like I said, I really appreciate you taking the time for us, and I know that you're busy and you're in high demand. Here you're headed to Ohio, so good luck here, and thanks again.
Yeah, good luck to yourself in Missouri. Should be exciting.
For sure. Thanks, man.
Shut up and sit down.